We praising the Most High. We worship on the beat. We stay up on them scripts. We take them to the streets. We wake our people up. We not gon' see defeat. And even though we sick, He got that remedy. We praising the Most High. We worship on the beat. We stay up.
Shabbat Shalom, family. It's your boy Silent Prophet here on Shabbat Talk. One more time, one more again. We got Brother Joel on here as always. You know, he ain't letting me go nowhere. He's keeping me close. Keeping me close. Got another guest this week. So I guess this is a back-to-back weeks we've had guests. So all praises to the Most High for that. This is actually my cousin, more than a little brother, Daniel. Go ahead, you know what I'm saying? Introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Daniel. Shot-town, just chilling. I'm ready for this Shabbat talk. This is my first time, so I'm looking forward to it, man.
Praise God. Oh, and he does make music, family. So if you want to get into some music, look up Danny Amnesia.
Yeah.
Danny Amnesia. He got some fire. This brother's anointed.
Thanks, bro.
Already know. All right. So Joe, man, take us through the day and how you got to the information you're about to bring out and the discussion we're about to have.
Well, I like to go through Torah portions, and I'm going through them. Yeah. I hadn't for a while, but I decided to get back into it because I think it's important to really get the foundation of that, you know. So I was listening to Torah portion, and as soon as I got done listening to it, well, I also listened to a little commentary on it, which is pretty interesting. But then, as soon as I got done listening to it, I was listening to Truth Seekers podcast, and the guest he had on, I can't remember which podcast it was, who the guest was, but regardless, the guest he had on right after I listened to this Torah portion was talking a lot about the same stuff that got me in this Torah portion, and kind of really interesting, you know. So this Torah portion is Numbers 19, 20, 21, and then the first verse, 22. But it starts off with the red heifer sacrifice, which is really just amazing how the red heifer sacrifice goes. The way it points to Messiah, so many different ways. It's just amazing. And but after it talks about the red heifer sacrifice, then you've got the death of Miriam, Aaron, and you know, when Aaron dies, Moses strips the garments of the high priest off of Aaron, and they put him on his son Eleazar, and he becomes a new high priest. And then it's also got the laws of purification whenever you come in contact with a dead body, and what all that has to do. And the serpents coming into the camp and biting people and killing them, and lots of them died because of that. And then, of course, Moses putting the brazen serpent on the pole, and anyone that looked at it they survived. So it involves a lot of death and what to do when you come in contact with death, and some of the really interesting points that you know, they're not straight up said in the Torah portion, but that were brought up through listening to podcasts and commentaries and stuff, was that we're like actually constantly in contact with the dead body because the body's dying, you know, they're not actually living like they're supposed to be, you know, because since Adam fell and ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, our bodies are just slowly dying. You know, they're not alive like they're supposed to be. You know, we were supposed to be alive, but now we're just slowly dying. So essentially, our bodies are decaying, and we're constantly in contact with them because we're in our bodies, you know? And so we need to always be cleansed by the I didn't have any specific scriptures really to I'm terrible at making notes, by the way, so if anyone I mean I can hear something be like, oh, that's awesome, and then I just
Yeah.
so, yeah, I just got to store it all up in here, and a lot of it doesn't properly. So, but yeah. So whoever touches the dead body. Actually, yeah. Let's go and read a little bit of this. Yeah. Let's see. How can I clear my screen? Just a few passages here, and we'll go through a little bit here and there.
Be close. There we go. All right, you should be able to share your screen now.
Cool. Okay. Oh, there we go. There it is. Here we go. Cool. So, okay, so this is talking about the red heifer, sacrifice of the red heifer. He that touches a dead body of any man will be unclean 7 days, and he shall purify himself within the 3rd day and on the 7th day, and he shall be clean. If he purify not himself on the 3rd day, then the 7th day he shall not be clean. So there's most things that make you unclean in Scripture. You're supposed to you go and wash and then be clean, right? But when you come in contact with a dead body, a man, right? Then you have to purify yourself on the 3rd day and on the 7th day, and you're not clean if you just do the 7th. You're still unclean. Interesting. Whosoever touches the dead body of any man that is dead, purify himself, and purify not himself, defileth the tabernacle. Sorry, something in my eye.
What book is this, Joe?
Oh, this is Numbers chapter 19.
Numbers 19.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Whosoever touches the dead body of any man that is dead, purify not himself, defileth the tabernacle of the Most High, and that soul shall be cut off from Israel, because the water of separation was not sprinkled upon him. He shall be unclean; his uncleanness is yet on him. This is the law when a man is in a tent. So it goes on to talk about, if one dies in a tent, any vessel that's not covered is unclean. Any clay vessel is unclean. The whole tent's unclean. Anyone who's unclean. And then what it does, it comes to where it's that. Let's see. Maybe it's the next chapter. Here we go. Oh, so basically, it talks about you mixed up ashes, water, and dipped hyssop and sprinkled the whole tent with hyssop and ashes. And interestingly enough, I had heard years back some Bible seminar where essentially the guy was just demonstrating that the Bible is true and verifiably accurate and so forth. And he said that using hyssop and ashes and water and around it, it's like one of the best natural disinfectants that you can make. So it would get rid of all of the the germs and bacteria and stuff, because when someone dies, they let the bacteria, and germs, and make it sick. And so by doing that, they actually like really cleaned up everything, and that's something that, you know, it's only been in recent history that we knew that that would disinfect stuff scientifically anyway. And here you've got the Most High telling Israel that's how you clean up whenever there's a dead body, you know. Not really stuff. And then so it goes through the death of Miriam and Moses striking the rock and speaking to it. Death of Aaron, and then Eliezer taking over. And then ultimately, that's kind of a microcosm of the whole, how the Levitical priesthood was transferred from John the Baptist to Messiah. And now it's come back to the order of Melchizedek, and which actually makes, just like it was always planned in Exodus. Where is it? Let me see if I can find that. Actually, I could search it on here. I'm not used to using eSword. I haven't used it in time. Where do you search? Oh, it's because I got the parallel one.
eSword looks like a lexicon.
Oh, dude, it's great. To get off topic a little bit, I guess it's great. You can choose just like one. Like if I want King James, you got King James right here, and all of the Strong's concordance numbers right there. Click on that, and it's going to bring it up all the Strong's, King James concordance, and Brown Driver Briggs. But if you just put your cursor over it, it'll bring up the definition, so you don't have to go through all that. Excuse me. And then it's just great. Like I got all these different dictionaries. Just wonderful stuff. eSword is definitely a very good tool. I can't believe I hadn't used it in so long. I used to use it for all my studies, and I had it on my old computer when the fire burned down my house. I just never got it on this computer for whatever reason. I don't know why. And then I thought about it. And the same day that I thought about it and told you about it, you were like, "Yeah, I heard about that."
Yeah. Truth Seeker had told me he studies using eSword. So
yeah, it's definitely and like if you don't know the English definition, right? So like abundantly, click on that and it'll bring up Webster's dictionary and it'll tell you what it is in English. And then you want to see the Hebrew.
go back to what you just clicked on. I saw Haya down there. I saw Haya.
Right here.
Yeah. I saw the word Haya down there.
Might be this. Let's see. I don't know.
I saw Haya down there for a second.
Huh.
Like, what is you looking up? What you looking into? I'm just being nosy.
You me?
No, I was talking about Joel.
Oh, okay.
Saw the word Haya on there.
Got some tabs open.
I don't know. It might have been on there somewhere. I don't know.
Oh, I can't see it. Oh, okay.
It's all good though. But you mentioned earlier, Joel. You mentioned earlier that the red heifer sacrifice is directly linked to the Messiah.
Yeah, in so many different ways. I couldn't even do it justice to try to explain it all. I have seen Jim Staley did a great thread about the red heifer. I would highly recommend checking that out. But yeah, we could even read through the red heifer sacrifice and see all and look at several of the parallels here. So, now let me do the parallel. Easier to see that way. Okay, so here we can read it. Let's read it out of the scriptures. So this is the law of the Torah which Yahweh had commanded, saying, speak to the children of Israel that they bring you a red heifer, a perfect one, in which there is no blemish, and on which no yoke has ever come.
For the people, what's a red heifer? I'm gonna ask questions like I don't know any of this. So
Yeah. So the red heifer is,
follow
it's just basically a red female cow, with red hair. We could look at that. Let's look at that. So we go to red Adam. Interesting. Adam.
Yep, Adam.
So an Adam, a ruddy. So there we go. We got there's a heifer. It means red or ruddy or rosy. But yeah, it says just a cow with reddish hair. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's got to be perfect. In fact, like in the Talmud, they have like special things, like they have to search through it and find more than one white hair, more than one hair that's not red, then it can't be used. Just interesting. And you shall give it to Eleazar the priest, and he shall bring it outside the camp, and shall slay it for him. So the red heifer, that's another thing. Red heifer was sacrificed outside of the camp, not inside like all the other ones. Eleazar the priest shall take some of its blood with his finger and sprinkle some of its blood 7 times toward the front of the tent of appointment. And the heifer shall be burned before his eyes. He burns its hide and its flesh and its blood and its dung. And the priest shall take cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet. Sorry about that.
Are you good?
So cedar, that's interesting. They would put cedar in the midst of the fire because the beam that Messiah was crucified on was cedar beam. The priest wash his garments and bathe. But the priest should be unclean until evening. After doing it, he is burned. Yeah. Like I said, I can't really do it justice. But another thing to note, actually, a couple years ago when I was studying this, I believe it was while I was going through the Torah portion, the sprinkle the blood 7 times. It was actually 7 separate times when Messiah bled through the whole ordeal. He first bled when he was in the garden, and blood came out of his pores, sweat, and then going to go be taken to the Inquisition. He was getting struck, and that made him bleed. And then while he was being questioned, they struck him, and then he the thorns on him when they whipped him, etc. Then when nailing him would cause him to bleed, and then getting pierced in the side with a spear. So there was actually 7 separate times that something specific made him bleed. So that's another interesting parallel.
Wow.
Yeah. You study a lot.
Oh man, yeah. I used to study a lot more than I do. I wish I could have. I had time to study quite as much as I used to. But
Yeah, Joe is humble. Listen, his mind is up because he don't like he tells you he doesn't take notes a lot, right? And the notes he does take, they're like scribble scrabble notes and little notepads and stuff like that that'd be nearest to him so he can write something down. but for the most part, his mind, his brain is a Rolodex. It's a biblical Rolodex. Like Joel knows what he wants to say, and he knows the information that he wants to like speak on. It's just that his mind, he has to like dig through like so much material in his mind to get to what he wants to say. And I tell him all the time to just write it down, Joel. Just write it down. You can read it, bro. You know. But this man is he's who I go to when I have questions and I run into biblical roadblocks and stuff like that. Like this brother right here is solid.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, man, that just encouraged me because I need to start writing down. Like I think a lot and I, compartmentalize stuff, but writing down, I think Jay-Z said if he had wrote down most of his ideas, he'd probably be richer. So, yeah.
Yeah, but Jay-Z can say that.
Yeah.
It's easy to say, if I wrote down, I'll be richer when you're already rich. Like, like that boy.
But no, actually writing stuff down is extremely important. I need to get back into that.
I'm lazy, so sometimes I don't do it, but if I do it, it'll help me better. I don't know why I don't do it. I need to do that more.
I do too. I think a lot of the issue is now that my job is driving, I don't really while I'm driving I can't pick stuff up. So I think that's in previous years I had a job where I could study scripture and I'd be sitting at a desk, so I'd be like, oh, let me write that down, but not anymore. So but yeah, so here we go. And the clean man shall gather up the ashes of Heifer and shall place them outside the camp in a clean place. Interesting thing there. Place them outside the camp in a clean place because Messiah's grave and all that. Interesting. And they shall be kept for the congregation of the children of Israel. For the water of uncleanness, it is for cleansing from sin. And that's specifically what it's for cleansing from sin. And he who gathers the ashes have washed his garments and be unclean until evening. It shall be a law forever for the children of Israel and to the stranger who sojourns in their midst. And then it goes on to talk about the dead body of a human. And then you got the death of Miriam. So after talking about the red heifer, which is for cleansing of sins and all that, and then you get the you get several stories about prominent figures among the Israelites dying, and then that's interesting. And the children of Israel came into the wilderness of sin in the first new moon, and the people stayed in Kadesh, and Miriam died there, was buried there. Interesting. Miriam means rebelliously. I did not know that.
Me either. I'm sorry. I kind of got distracted when I saw the word new moon.
I know, right? Yeah.
I got distracted.
Yep, and the first new moon. No. So, yeah, there we go. So they come to the Kadesh, which actually here you will see Kadesh means sanctuary, Kadesh, place in the desert. Let's see, and it's from sacred person that is technically a male devotee. So then I don't know, I get rabbit trails and stuff. there was no water, and the congregation assembled against Moses and Aaron. And the people contended with Moses and spake, saying, if only we had died, our brothers died before Yahweh. And why have you brought up this assembly, Yahweh, into the wilderness, that we and our livestock should die here? And why have you brought us out of Egypt to bring us into this evil place? So all this that you call an evil place and all that. Not a place of grain and figs and vine and pomegranates, and there is no water to drink. And Moses and Aaron, in the presence of the assembly, to the door of the tent of appointment, and they fell on their faces. And so this would get the instructions to take the rod, and this would be, I believe, Aaron's rod budded in the last chapter. And you shall speak to the rock before their eyes, and it shall give its water. So he's told to speak to the rock. You shall bring water for them out of the rock, to give drink to the congregation and their livestock. And Moses took the rod from before Yahweh as he commanded him, and Moses assembled the assembly before the rock, and he said, hear now, you fools, shall we bring water for you out of this rock? And Moses took his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod, and much water came out, and the congregation of livestock drank. But Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron, because you did not believe me to set me apart in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you do not bring the assembly into the land which I have given. So right here, this, to most people, this would seem like a minor thing to strike the rock and speak to it, because previously he was told to rock. But Moses was just, he's upset. They're all the time griping and complaining to him, and so he struck the rock. And right here, what the Most High has to say to him, he says, because you did not believe me to set me apart in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you do not bring assembly to the land. King James says, because you believed me not to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this congregation into the land which I have given them. This is, there's more to it than just this, but Moses, by speaking to the rock, would have sanctified the Most High in the eyes of the children of Israel, right? Because they're being all rebellious and stuff. And then Moses says here, here now, you rebels, shall we bring water out of this rock? So he's saying that he and Aaron is doing it. He's not saying that the Most High is doing it for him. He's saying that he and Aaron's the ones that's doing it, and then he strikes it, And yeah, so it would seem, to most people, that would seem like a minor thing. This whole time Moses is taking these people to the promised land, and then he didn't even get to go in himself. But it was a pretty important thing. He was supposed to demonstrate that that the Most High is doing this, that the Most High is giving them water, and instead, in his anger, he struck it and took it as if to credit himself. Whereas before, when he was told to strike the rock, it was for the purpose of Israel to realize, hey, this is the guy we need to be listening to, right? Whereas here, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
And here, he's supposed to be giving all the glory to the Most High, and instead is taking it to himself because he's so angry. He's like, look, you've been complaining and griping at me these 40 years, and these are actually the Israelites that are going in to inherit the land. This is actually after most of the previous generation had died, not wanting to go into the land. So,
Come, hold on 1 second. I'll grab it.
oh yeah, you're good.
Yeah, man, Joel, that's weird you talking about that because I was just listening to a sermon the other day by a preacher by the name of Darius Daniels, and he was speaking of when God was going to take out the people and Moses prayed for him. He was speaking on like how that came back to kind of bite him because they're kind of responsible for the reason that he got so angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's actually a verse in I think it's Psalms 106, if I'm not mistaken. It talks about when Moses had got mad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Trying to look for it right now. It says it says, so he said he would destroy them had not Moses, his chosen one, stood in the breach before him to keep his wrath from destroying them.
Yeah, because there was actually several times that the Most High was going to wipe them all out and start over with Moses and Aaron, and every time Moses pleaded for him, which is actually why Moses was a leader for them, because he even cared about his enemies, right? Like when the whole congregation is talking about they're going to stone him, they got rocks in their hands ready to stone him. And he's begging the Most High not to kill him, you know, because I mean, if people's trying to kill me, and then God says, "Oh, I'm gonna take him out for you," I'd be like, "Yeah, go get him," you know, you know, good. I don't have to deal with them anymore. But no, Moses even loved his enemies, man. Even when the entire congregation was against him, making themselves enemies of him, he still loved them, you know.
That's kind of like a preview of Christ on the cross, because Christ was on the cross. Not only did he forgive the thieves, but he was like, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They was crucifying them,
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yep.
I got a question. It's off topic.
Yeah.
But I don't have the time to look everything up. One of the sisters messaged me. She said, did the Most High ever use a Pharisee as a prophet? Like as a prophet? And right off the top of my head, I don't know, unless you're considering Paul a Pharisee.
Yeah.
I mean, Paul a prophet.
Yeah.
If you're considering
I would say
Paul a
Paul.
prophet.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's any specific examples of that in Scripture off the top of my head. I don't know.
Joseph of Arimathea wasn't, I don't know if he was a prophet, but he believed in Jesus. I would say Paul.
I know a lot of the Pharisees actually did believe in God, and but they didn't do it openly, right? Because they were afraid of being thrown out of the congregation, because they loved the praise of men more than declaring the truth.
I couldn't think of any off the top of my head, honestly.
Nicodemus, maybe, but Nicodemus even, he even met Messiah in secret because he didn't want to be seen with him, And I can't even think of anything prophetic that Nicodemus said. There could have been. I don't think there's specific examples of it in Scripture. Most of the time, Messiah is telling them how wrong they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, I was just curious if you had any other things, because my mind.
You know what? Now that I think about it, there was. There was. Gamaliel. he had said, and he said it as a prophecy.
Who?
Gamaliel.
Gamaliel.
Yeah. Or however you pronounce it. I don't know. Right. Gamaliel. Yeah, he had said something in Acts, and they said it was something or something like that, I think.
But people can prophesy and not be prophets.
Yeah.
I think she's asking, was like a prophet of the Most High also a Pharisee?
I'd say the closest would be Paul.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's where I'm at too.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about the side beat, but continue.
Yeah. So yeah, that's basically that, you know. Then it talked about they try to travel through Edom, and the Edomites won't let them. They try to travel through the Midianites, and they won't let them. And they wept for the whole congregation. They'll mourn for Aaron for 30 days after. I know, man. This stuff. I'm not very eloquent speaking. You know, not good at speaking what's on my mind.
Neither was Moses, and you see what he did.
Right. Yeah. But it's just like got all this stuff in my mind that I'm like, oh man, this is so awesome, and it's hard for me to lay it in a way that like I don't know.
Maybe we can sit down together and you like break it down for me, and then I'll take notes off of you, and then bounce it off the scriptures, and then I'll put together something and we can revisit it. I got you. All
right, maybe, yeah. So, then we got, okay, and then here's where they killed a bunch of Israelites, or I mean, not the Israelites, Canaanites. So Israel made a vow and said, if you deliver this people into my hand indeed, then I shall put their cities under the ban, and the Most High to the voice of Israel, and gave the Canaanites, and they put them into the city, in their cities under the ban, what the name of this place was. So then they take over, and then they come back to the Sea of Reeds, right? So they're back to the Red Sea. And let's see. Oh, around the land of Edom. Huh, interesting. So Mount Sinai is in the land of Edom. Never noticed that before. And so then they spoke against Elohim and against Moses again. Here again, they're complaining ripen. And now, to be completely fair, I mean, it was not comfortable. I don't know what the message was like, but they complained about it. You know, to be completely fair, they probably, if we were to experience the situation that they were going through, we'd probably be complaining too. But here they are once again griping, and he said, "Why have you brought us out of Mitzrayim to die in the wilderness, where there is food and no water, are being loathed this light bread?" So they were like, "Man, we hate this man. Why'd you bring us out here?" You know. And so Most High sent serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and many of the people of Israel died. Lots of them died. But then this generation there, interestingly enough, was they were able to see their errors better than than the previous generation. The previous generation would gripe and complain and continue doing it and continue doing it and continue doing it. But this generation here, people came to Moses and they said, "We have sinned, for we have spoken against the Most High and against you. Pray to the Most High to take away the serpents from us." And Moses went and prayed on their behalf. So they come to Moses. They say, "Look, sorry, man. We were talking bad about you. We were talking bad about God. Pray to him for us." You know? And so Moses did. And he was told to make a fiery serpent, set it on a pole, and that anyone who looked at it was bitten. When he looked at it, they would live. So Moses made the bronze serpent, put it on a pole, and it came to be if a serpent had bitten anyone, he looked at the bronze serpent and lived. And the children of Israel camped set out and camped in Abba. Whatever. I wonder what that means. So this is such a great tool to be able to look up stuff, especially like the names of places. Because actually, like lots of times, it's very can't put the place's name. Not always, or maybe it always is, and I just don't recognize the profundity of it. You know? But water skins is what it means. And they departed, and they camped at Abiram, hard to pronounce some of this stuff. And so then they went to east of Moab. And yeah, then this is where they were kind of talking to Moab, trying to get them to let them go through. And oh yeah, here. And then so this guy in Moab, what's his name? And Israel sent messengers to Sihon, sovereign of the Amorites, saying, "Let me pass through the land. We shall not turn the fields, and we won't. We're not going to eat any of your stuff. We're not going to drink any of your water. Just let us pass through." You know. And he said no. And Israel struck him with the edge of the sword, took possession of the land, and Ammon and Shabbat, his father, or as far as the children of Ammon from the border of I don't know, this didn't necessarily have any particular profundity to this part here. Which it very well might be, probably is. Every year when I go through the Torah portion, different things stick out to me.
Right.
Like, whoa.
You learn something new every time.
Yeah, every time. Because, you know, it's the living word, you know, how I could read something and it might not mean anything to me, but then you could read it, it might mean something to you, or it might mean something to me and it might mean something completely different to you. Because and they can both be correct too, you know, not about formulating doctrine, just the meaning of it, because maybe something in your life you're going through at the moment, whether it's good or bad,
makes me more receptive to that particular understanding.
Yeah. And sometimes it might even be just a message specifically for you that God is trying to put through the scripture, just by idiom or something, that it doesn't actually mean that, but to you at that moment it does. You feel what I'm saying?
Right.
So, just interesting. The living word, you know, it's alive, man. It is totally alive.
It's
totally alive. took possession of the land. So there we go. That's so they took possession. So yeah.
Yeah, I wanna know more information on the
red heifer.
like just like you were saying, there was so many different connections to the Messiah from Numbers chapter 19, 20, and 21. So I'm gonna be getting with you for sure, because I wanna be able to see the parallels and everything like that with you, because I don't know, like I have this innate ability. I think it's just because me and you click like that, but I have the innate ability to hear you talk about whatever topic, and I can absorb it all. Like I know exactly where you're coming from, right? So I can get it all, I can download it, right? Download it and then copy it and paste it to a document where I can put my bullet points and everything, and then we can get right into it. So I'm excited.
Put it in order and make it to where people can be like, oh wow, that is awesome, Whereas with me, I'm all like talking and just blabbering and
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man. We'll get to talking about it. The red heifer is really it's just super for me, man.
So you know what's crazy?
What's that?
This is how amazing the Most High is, right? So I got a call from a sister I hadn't spoken to in about a month, maybe a little over a month. And we got the catching up and talking, and then we ended up getting into the scriptures. And what is so amazing is that this sister was struggling with understanding the New Testament, and it was actually causing her strife, because it was causing her to begin to doubt the Messiah. And because she understands, she's recently come into the understanding of that we are supposed to be adhering to and being obedient to Torah, to the law, right? Yeah. But then now that she has this newfound understanding, she goes to the New Testament, and now she's reading all of the things in the New Testament that is perceived to be teaching against the Torah, or is perceived to be going against the Torah. So she she started to basically doubt the Messiah and stuff like that. And I told her, like, I get where you're coming from, because I was there at one point in time. I did the same thing with Paul and his epistles. I almost wrote Paul off completely and just almost just said, if I come across anything that Paul wrote, I'm just gonna ignore it. But I believe you have to go through those you got peaks and you got valleys, and those low points, because they are a teaching tool. They help us grow, not only in our knowledge of the scriptures, but also in the spirit too. Once we understand that the Bible doesn't contradict itself, right? We say that all the time, but then when we find a contradiction, it's like, uh-oh, what's going on here? Like, then your red flags get to going off. But she had reached out to me today and was and she was telling me about how she's read Leviticus 11, and she's been keeping the dietary laws. However, she's having trouble when she reads a certain passage in the New Testament. And it was like, it's so crazy, because I was telling her about how we talk about these topics on Shabbat Talk too, especially the last few, going into the Messiah's own words, right? And deciphering his words and giving the people the true understanding, the true context of what he's talking about. And so she took me to the Messiah speaking on a topic that I hadn't covered. I hadn't covered on any of my previous videos. we ain't covered on the Shabbat talk. I just discussed it in conversation, but I didn't even go too deep into it. I just left it as that's not what the Messiah meant. So we went into the scriptures over the phone, and I ain't had no notes or nothing. I ain't had nothing to go to. It was just the Ruach was leading me. And as I was reading it and explaining it, the Ruach was giving me all the answers. And I was able to explain it in such a way, all praises to the Most High, where by the time we finished with the conversation, she was like, see, because I would read about the Messiah in one area of the New Testament, and he'll be like XYZ, like he's solid. And then I'll read about the Messiah in other areas of the New Testament, and it seems skeptical to me. And so she said, basically, now that's the same Messiah from that sketchy side, from her viewpoint. That's the same Messiah that she had her faith in before. And she's like, she's now good with the Messiah in terms of no more doubt. And I was like, all praises, because the same Messiah that you saw over here that you had that faith in is the same Messiah that's over here. He's just speaking in a way in which you just didn't understand before.
Yeah.
You know?
Hallelujah.
It connected some dots and it connected some revelations. And I was like, man, that'd be dope. So if you brothers would indulge me for a little bit, I would like to jump to the New Testament.
Yeah.
Kind of hit this.
Yeah,
up
bro. Let's get it.
Okay, so
Did you want me to pull it up? Do you want to get the pull it up on here?
Let's see. Hold on. Oh, did I just make you share your
I think you
screen?
did.
Whoa.
I think you did.
Hold on.
Oh no. I shared the screen.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or were you trying to share?
Yeah, go back. I'm gonna hit the close.
Oh, cut it
Not
off.
the close, but like just yeah. All right. So what pen? All right, go to my name.
Yeah.
And then on the participants tab, and then make me host.
All right.
Oh, never mind. I can do it. Reclaim host. I just did it.
No,
I had to go to my name. I thought,
there is a way. I don't know how, but there is a way you can make a co-host to where two different people can at any point without having to go back and forth with hosts or whatever. Somehow, I don't know how.
I'll learn it more as I get more comfortable with Zoom.
Yeah.
But let me pull it. Let me pull this up. So Google, because I'm blind, and so I like to make it as big as possible. Make it big as possible for the people who watching too as well. So pretty much the specific thing she was struggling with in regards to the dietary law is when the Messiah was saying that it's not what you put into your mouth that defiles you, it's what comes out of your mouth that defiles you, right? And a lot of people, she was explaining to me that a lot of her friends and family are of the understanding that they can eat whatever they want to eat and not keep the dietary laws based on the understanding that the Messiah was, talking about food. So whatever goes into your mouth doesn't defile you. They can eat, all of the different things that they want to eat without any repercussion. So we got to talking, and then I just was like, let's get to the scriptures. You feel me? You know what I'm saying? Let's ground everything in the scripture. And the Messiah, he's never he never says something and that's just the only thing that he's talking about. He always has like a deeper meaning as to what he's saying. Even when he's talking plainly and he's not speaking in parables, there's always more that we can dig into it, right? And so the verse that let me see, the verse that she mentioned, right here, verse 11, he says, Not that which goeth into the mouth defileth a man, but that which cometh out of the mouth, this defileth the man, right? And then there's another one. He said in verse 17, 18, right? It says, do not ye yet understand that whatsoever entereth in at the mouth goeth into the belly, and is cast out into the draught. But those things which proceed out of the mouth come forth from the heart, and they defile the man. I know we've definitely addressed Acts chapter 10 and that understanding in terms of that not being in regards to food. We've already talked about that, but this right here, it was different, you know. And this is
because yeah, he is definitely talking about food right here.
Yeah, because this is regarding food slightly. On the surface, it's regarding food, and it was on the spot. And so I didn't, like I said, I didn't have any notes and everything like that. Like literally, the Ruach, the Spirit, was leading me as I was talking to her, and he did it in such a way where it was connecting the dots for her too, because she's very intuitive, and she likes to ask a lot of questions to make sure that she understands what you're trying to tell her. And so she'll ask questions and specifics, and the Ruach was just giving answer after answer. But to give a backstory, this is Matthew chapter 15, and this is when the Pharisees basically tried to call out the Messiah and his disciples for not washing their hands. Okay, and you know, it says, then came to Yasha, scribes and Pharisees, which were of Jerusalem, saying, why do thy disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? For they wash not their hands when they eat bread. So that was like the whole part. And so like I went through this like line for line, and we broke it all down. And so basically when you're reading, for those of you who are trying to get better at like your studies, your biblical studies and stuff, you always want to look at some things as you're reading the text. Obviously, you want to look at the translations and what the words mean. Like when you saw Joel going through Numbers 19, 20, and 21 earlier, he was looking at the Strong's numbers and different things like that for context. You also want to look at who's talking, who's present in that scene, and who and what is being said, right? So it says, then came to Yasha, scribes and Pharisees. So right now we got three individuals, right? We know the Messiah, we got scribes, and we got Pharisees. It says, which were of Jerusalem. And then they said, why do thy disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? For they wash not their hands when they eat bread. Now, I know that there's a understanding that the Messiah did away with the law, but this is one of the key moments during the Messiah's time, and he does this over and over again, but this is a good example. Whenever the Messiah is questioned about something, he always points them back to either Moses or to the Most High or to the law. He always points them back. He never points them to him. He always points them to the source. And so he answered them. He says, but he answered and said unto them, why do ye also transgress the commandment of the Most High by your tradition? So when they came and asked him this question, and they was basically trying to catch him up, because they were teaching the tradition of the elders. Where is that? Tradition of the elders, yeah. This is what they were teaching during that time. Right? They teach the law, but they also was teaching additional things. And they were putting more emphasis on these things than they were on the law itself. And that's one of the reasons why the Messiah was so furious, and why he addressed the Pharisees and the scribes so harshly, because of what they were doing, right? So he answered them. He said, but why do you transgress the commandment of the Most High by your tradition? He says, for the Most High commanded, saying, honor thy father and thy mother, and he that curseth father or mother, let him die the death. But ye say, whosoever shall say to his father or his mother, it is a gift by whatsoever thou mightest be pure profited by me, and honor not his father or his mother, he shall be free. Thus have ye made the commandment of the Most High of none effect by your tradition. So basically, their tradition contradicted the Torah, contradicted what the Most High set forth, right? And so he were telling them that, basically, hold on. He was telling them that they have made the commandment of the Most High none effect by their traditions. Because if people are following their traditions and not the actual instructions from the Most High, then they're not getting that edification and that knowledge from the law. They're getting their knowledge from something that wasn't even instituted by the Most High himself. And what does he call them? He says, ye hypocrites. Right? He called them hypocrites. Now, getting back to the beginning of this, the actual tradition that they was addressing was this right here. It says, for they wash not their hands when they eat bread. This was what they were trying to call him and the disciples out for, right? Well, when you come down, he says, well, did Esaias prophesy of you, saying, this people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth, and honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Doctrines and commandments of men are the traditions of elders that they have been following and telling people that they had to keep. And this specific tradition of men, tradition of elders or doctrine of men, was the fact that they had to wash their hands before they ate bread. Now, I definitely urge everybody to go into the scriptures for themselves and read, but there's no teaching in Torah saying that you have to wash your hands before you eat bread. That instruction was not from the Most High, but it was from the scribes and the Pharisees. And so the Messiah is basically exposing their false doctrine, exposing their doctrines and the commandments of men. And so next, what does he do? He calls the multitude and said unto them, hear and understand. And this was significant. I didn't even catch this earlier. He said for them to hear and understand. So when you hear something and you seek to understand something, that means that you're listening. You can hear something and not understand it, right? Or you can have your own understanding and not listen and not hear what somebody said. But when you put these two together, you actually are listening. He's telling them to listen to what he's about to say. And then that's when he goes into verse 11 and he says, not that which goeth into the mouth defileth a man, but that which cometh out of the mouth, this defileth a man. Then came his disciples and said unto him, knowest thou that the Pharisees were offended after they heard this saying? So his disciples came to him and was like, yo, the Pharisees got offended when you said, they got mad when you said that. And he says, but he answered and said, every plant which my heavenly Father hath not planted shall be rooted up. Every plant is symbolic in this context for us, for men. Says that his Father has not planted. So anybody that was not chosen by the Most High, by the Father, they shall be rooted up. And then he says, let them alone. They be blind leaders of the blind. And if the blind lead the blind, both shall fall into the ditch. So he said, let them be. Don't worry about them, because they're blind leaders, and they're leading other people and causing them to be blind. And both of them being blind, they are going to follow the blind straight into the ditch. Then answered Peter and said unto him, declare unto us this parable. So he basically is asking him to explain everything the Messiah has said so far to everybody. And Yasha said, "Are ye also yet without understanding?" We see this response a lot with the Messiah when he goes and he's giving understanding, he's speaking in parables, or he's speaking just about anything, and the disciples don't understand what he's saying. He goes like, "Man, like you've been with me how long and you still don't understand like the deeper meanings of these types of things?" So he continues on. He says, "Do not ye yet understand that whatsoever entereth in at the mouth," so people read this and they say, okay, we're still talking about food here, right? "Goeth into the belly and is cast out into the draught. But those things which proceed out of the mouth come forth from the heart, and they defile the man." So he's trying to get them to understand the deeper meaning of what he's talking about. Because right now they're probably still thinking that he's talking about food. It says, "For out of the heart proceed evil things, evil thoughts, murderers, adulterers, fornicators, thefts, false witness, blasphemies." He says, "These are the things which defile a man, but to eat with unwashed hands defileth not a man." So I want to just point out, he doesn't say, but to eat to eat shrimp, to eat pork, to eat lobster, to eat crab, to eat, I don't know, some random strange lizard.
Buzzards, vultures. Mm.
What'd you say?
He didn't say, "Oh, it's all right to eat vultures," you know.
Vultures, right? Or eagles.
So
right?
what other?
Eagle.
Oh no, man. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Ask your question.
Oh, you keep going.
Right? He was talking specifically, unwashed hands defileth not a man. He only mentioned this is because this is what the scribes and the Pharisees originally accused him of, right? And then it says, "Then Yasha went thence and departed into the coast of Tyre and Sidon, and behold, a woman of Canaan came from the coast and cried unto him, saying," oh no, this is moving on to something else. So what do we got, right? What is the Messiah actually talking about here? What is he actually talking about? We got the scribes and the Pharisees addressing him and his disciples, and he's saying they transgressed the tradition of the elders, right? And it says, "For they wash not their hands when they eat bread." For anybody who's trying to really understand what the Messiah is addressing and why he is going so hard here, I strongly encourage you to look into the traditions, like Jewish traditions rooted in Judaism, traditions rooted in the Talmud. Joel mentioned the Talmud earlier, right? Those things will help you understand. And so when you go into, I literally just Googled something to kind of quickly mention it, because she asked me for proof or evidence of something about traditions regarding what we were reading. So I Googled Pharisees' traditions of washing hands, and literally the first thing popped up, hand washing in Judaism, right? Notice it says Judaism. It says Judaism. So like people say, "Oh, well, why don't you eat pork?" And I say, "Well, I keep the Torah. It's the dietary law in the Bible." And then they ask me, "Am I Jewish?" And I tell them no. I respond no, because I'm not Jewish. I am not a part of this religion. Judaism is rooted in paganism. It's rooted in paganism, and it doesn't strictly adhere to the Torah. As Joel even told me that Torah is sovereign. Okay, you don't go against Torah. However, in Judaism, they teach that if the rabbi says something, and the rabbi is basically a Jewish teacher, priest, pastor, whatever your equivalent is, if the rabbi tells you to do something and it contradicts the Torah, you follow what the rabbi says and not what the Torah says, which is completely opposite of what the scriptures actually say. But speaking of this, right? Hand washing in Judaism, Jewish law, okay? And look, when I put my cursor over it, it says halakha, with halakha, also transliterated as halacha or halakha or halakho, is the collective body of Jewish religious laws, which is derived from the written and oral Torah, okay? Halakha is based on biblical commandments, mitzvot, subsequent Talmudic, remember I said that you got to look into the Talmud, and rabbinic laws and the customs and traditions which were, and it goes into more on it, right? So we read religion, we read Jewish, we read Talmud, we read tradition and customs, all in within just this right here, okay? Just this right here, but we're gonna read it. It says, and custom prescribed ritual hand washing, ritualistic, that's another thing, that's like traditions as well. Hand washing in a number of situations. This practice is generally known by the Hebrew term nitilat yadayim, which literally means taking up of the hands. The Talmud, okay, and the Talmud, it says the Talmud is the central text of rabbinic Judaism and the primary source of Jewish religious law. Now, the Most High gave us the Torah. The Most High did not give us the Talmud. The Talmud actually originated in Babylon, right? So if we're keeping the instructions of the Most High that was given to us directly from him through Moses, why is this entire movement, this entire religion following something that wasn't even instituted by the Most High? Look, and it says, if you continue reading, it says it's the source of Jewish religious law and Jewish theology. It ain't say the Bible is. It ain't say the Torah is. It said the Talmud. And then it says, until the advent of modernity, in nearly all Jewish communities, the Talmud was the centerpiece of Jewish cultural life and was foundational to all Jewish, is it thought? Right here. To all Jewish, centerpiece of cultural life, and was foundational to all Jewish thought and aspiration, serving also as the guide for the daily life of Jews. This is right here. This is the Talmud, and this is what they're keeping, and they got this from that. It says the Talmud.
Yeah, see,
Sorry,
that's really. Oh no, it's good. Sorry, I mean to interrupt. No, the Talmud, the Judaism is based on the Talmud. It's not on the Torah. The Talmud is their religious text. Now the Talmud quotes the Torah and it talks about the Torah, and you could argue it's loosely based on the Torah, but that's really what the whole Judaism is based on. It's not based on the Torah.
Exactly. And so when you're creating things and it's not from the Most High, right? You're now finding yourself in error, right? Because you're teaching this as if it's the truth, and clearly we understand that it's not. And I'm gonna show you. So it says, the Talmud used the requirement of washing the hands in Leviticus 15:11 as a hint for general hand washing law, using asmacha, a biblical hint, rather than an explicit requirement. So it took something that was mentioned in the Torah and ran with it in so many words. But let's scroll down. We're gonna talk about occasions for hand washing. The halakha requires the hands to be washed before eating a meal containing bread. Because this is the reason why the Messiah got so upset with them. They were teaching that before you eat bread, you must wash your hands. If you do not wash your hands, that you were defiling your temple. That's why the Messiah was addressing them, because his disciples did not wash their hands, nor should they be required to, because it doesn't require us to wash our hands before eating bread in the Torah. This is a Talmudic ritual, not a not a law from the Most High.
Not a commandment.
Not a commandment. Exactly. Right. And then it says, this washing was initially known as Mayim Rishonim, first waters, but is now commonly known simply as Nitalat Yadayim, hand washing. And this was mentioned in the other portion, right? When it was talking about the Talmud, the Nitalat Yadayim. It says this only applies to bread made from one of the 5 chief grains: wheat, cultivated barley, spelt, wild barley, and oats. The washing is performed by pouring water from a cup over each hand. Then it says the Gemara. The Gemara is the component of the Talmud comprising rabbinical analysis of and commentary on the Mishnah. Okay, so this is basically an extension of the Talmud. Now check this out. The Gemara of the Babylonian Talmud contains homiletic descriptions of the importance of the practice, including an argument that washing before meals is so important that neglecting it is a tantamount to unchastity and risks divine punishment in the form of sudden destruction or poverty. Also known as purity, right? I told you, they was teaching that if you don't wash your hands, bro, it was gonna taint your body. It was gonna make you unclean, unchastity. Or it could even risk punishment from sudden death, or just like the Most High was gonna come down and destroy you instantly, or make you poor if you didn't wash your hands before you ate some type of bread. This is what they were teaching.
And only those 5 grains too, by the way.
Right, and specifically
if
only those 5
something
grains.
else, then you don't have to.
Now here, check it out. This is why the traditions of men always gets exposed. Check it out. This is what they teach. Rabbinic law requires that travelers go as far as 4 biblical miles to obtain water for washing prior to eating bread, if there is a known water source there. This applies only, so it only applies when, you got stipulations. All right, guys, look, check it out. To when the water source lies in one's direction of travel. However, had he already passed the water source, he is only obligated to backtrack to a distance of 1 biblical mile. The one exception to this rule is when a man or a party of men are encamped while on a journey and there is no water to be found in vicinity of their camp, in which case the sages of Israel have exempted them from washing their hands prior to breaking bread. The sages of Israel, I'm assuming from this context, I guess they're referring back to the rabbis, but they use the word sage specifically because a lot of this stuff, it deals in the Kabbalah anyway. And the Kabbalah is mysticism or sorcery. And we know that that's definitely a no-no according to the scriptures. But this is what the Messiah was addressing. It was this stuff right here. He wasn't addressing food itself. He was addressing the false doctrine. And I'm going to show you. So when he addresses them, right? Why does he mention, okay? Why does he mention this right here? But those things which proceed out of the mouth come forth from the heart, and they defile the man. Then he says, for out of the heart proceed evil things, or evil thoughts, murderers, adulterers, fornicators, thefts, false witnesses, and blasphemies. He was addressing the Pharisees, right? Because they are teaching this tradition of men. They're teaching that you are tainting your body if you don't wash your hands before you eat bread, and that it could cause severe consequences from the Most High. mind you, none of this came from the Most High. None of this was a commandment. And then he says, what comes out of your mouth, or what proceedeth out of your mouth, comes from your heart. Their hearts were wicked. Their hearts were wicked. And then he says, these are the things which defileth the man. But to eat with unwashed hands defileth not a man. Now, we know that he came to uphold the law. So he wouldn't disagree with this if this was in the Torah. If the Torah stated for us to have to wash our hands before we eat bread, then he would not say contrary. But he says, these are the things which defile a man. But to eat with unwashed hands defileth not a man. And in regards to like certain things that's subtle that a lot of people may not even catch, I mentioned earlier on the phone, when they addressed him, right? They knew that they were addressing him in the presence of many witnesses. And the witnesses that was there was most likely of the same understanding as them regarding this tradition. But when he responds with Torah, he responds with the commandment of the Most High. And then what does he do before he really gives them what he's trying to say? Check it out. Where is it at? Then, and he called the multitude and said unto them, hear and understand. So he was aware of the other people that was there, right? And instead of, trying to get the scribes and the Pharisees, to go to like a secure place by themselves and address them, he addressed their false doctrine in front of everybody. And he told everybody to hear and understand. So now he wasn't just addressing them, he was addressing the people too, like letting them know, like, I'm about to expose these false teachers, but I'm also going to do so in front of you, so you guys will also know that they are false teachers, so that you can correct yourselves and repent and now actually keep the commandments that were given to you, not these traditions of man. And so I tell people, if you ever find yourself reading the scriptures and the Messiah says or does something that gives you a red flag or something that you don't understand, I encourage you to always go to Matthew 23, because Matthew 23 will give you the context from the Messiah's perspective as to why he goes so hard at the Pharisees. So we were just in Matthew 15, so Matthew 23 is in the future, but he's still addressing the same things, okay? Now, I'm not going to read this whole thing, so read it on your own, but just definitely come to this chapter and read this entire chapter every time you have a question about himself in regards to whether he's teaching against or for the Torah, okay? It says, then Yasha... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, just by even making that tradition and teaching it as a commandment, is actually breaking the commandment. It's like in Deuteronomy, it says not to add to or diminish anything from the Torah. And that's, I think that's Deuteronomy 12, I think. Let me think. Yeah, find it.
I'll go to it.
Yeah, I think it's Deuteronomy 12. Yeah, right there. 32, 12, 32.
What things soever I command you, observe to do it. Thou shalt not add thereto, nor diminish from it. Right? So here's the thing, though. Here's the thing.
What verse is that?
This is Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 32. Right? here's the thing. If you want to implement some kind of rule, right? As long as it does not contradict the Torah, is not placed above the Torah, like in terms of importance or priority, right? And is not taught as a specific requirement or a commandment or an instruction or something that you have to do or else face, some type of divine consequence. It's okay to, say, all right, well, I prefer if you, didn't do these types of things, right?
Well, it's like has a rule in their house to take the shoes off, that you're not allowed to walk in their house with shoes on, right?
Right.
There ain't nothing wrong with that. House clean, there's nothing wrong. But if someone walks in with your shoes on, you're like, oh, you're going to hell because you're wearing shoes in the house. You know what I'm saying?
Correct. Absolutely.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. Or, and I'll give you a different example, using your same example. If the Torah told us that when we enter into a home, we need to keep our shoes on for whatever reason, if that was a law. It's not a law, but I'm saying if it was. And then we created a law in our own home saying you need to take your shoes off when you come in, we'd be wrong. Because now we're contradicting the Torah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That's the type of stuff that they were doing. They were literally taking their traditions of men and putting it on the same level or a higher level than the commandments of the Most High. In regards to the washing of the hands, now let's be real. In retrospect, is it probably better hygienically to wash your hands before you eat anything with your hands? Probably yes, right? But was that a commandment from the Most High to which if we didn't follow that, we would be punished? No, it was not. So if they would have said, all right, well, we prefer that when you eat certain things, especially bread for whatever reason, we prefer that you wash your hands. It's optional, it's not a requirement, but we just prefer that you do that, then that would be one thing. But they were teaching it as if it was the law. And I'll tell you from personal experience, I've had conversations with Jewish people who do keep the written and oral laws of their traditions. They are well versed in the Torah, and they conduct themselves on a daily basis according to the certain things that we talked about today, right? And I asked them, why do they, how do they justify doing the things that they do, right? Or carrying themselves in the way that they carry themselves, or have the understanding that they do. And you wouldn't believe the answer that I get. It's the same answer that I get when I ask someone who is of the Christian perspective, why do they celebrate Christmas? The answer is, oh, it's just how I was taught. It's a tradition. It's how we were taught to do it. And then when you break it down on a scriptural basis and show them what the actual scriptures say, and then you give them the option, hey, will you adhere to the Bible? Will you adhere to scripture? Or will you continue to adhere to the traditions that you were taught? And then you have the impasse, right? Because they have a decision to make at that point. You'd be surprised how many people are literally living their lives according to these doctrines that they themselves don't even truly understand. They've just been keeping it for so long because that's just what they were taught to do. Right? So let's go back to Matthew 23. Right? And this is why the Messiah gets so upset with the scribes and Pharisees. He says, then spake Yasha to the multitude. Again, he's addressing everybody that's present in the area, and to his disciples. He says, saying, the scribes and Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So they're sitting in Moses' seat. Joe, what, 2 weeks ago on Shabbat, you explained what Moses' seat was. Could you do that again for me, please?
It was basically like sitting in Moses' seat was to say that they had the authority of Moses. So they were taking on the authority of Moses, saying, yeah, I have the same authority as Moses. You know what I mean?
Right. The teachers of the law, scribes, Pharisees, priests. That was what Moses was doing with Israel before all of that stuff was established. And so they are really literally personifying him as the custodians of the law, so to speak, right? And if they're teaching the people wrong, representing Moses, because this guy right here, he was the man. He was one of the goats. Okay, he was one of the goats. If they're representing him and they're teaching incorrectly, they're causing this to be affected. But more so, who did he represent? Right? Who did Moses serve? Who did Moses represent? He represented the Most High. So now, when you mess with the Torah, when you mess with the law through your deceitful twisting of scriptures and your teaching traditions of men rather than the commandments of the Most High, now you are coming at the Most High, right? And the Messiah said, for he comes in the name of his Father to teach his Father's doctrine, to teach his Father's commandments, to speak on those things, not his own, his Father's. So basically, the Messiah came to rep his dad. And if you are disrespecting what his dad had established, which is the law, sitting in the seat, sitting in the chair of the person who the Most High chose to give us the law, that's a direct representation and disrespect to the one who sent him. And the one who sent him was the Messiah's pops. So in so many words, the Messiah was defending his dad, which is one of the reasons why he got so upset with the scribes and the Pharisees. Right? And he tells the people, he says, all therefore whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do, but do not ye after their works, for they say and do not. Right? And then he talks about how they bear heavy burdens and they won't help you with the burdens that they give you from all of the traditions. And then he says they just want to be seen. They just want to be seen of people. They want to be in front of everybody. Everybody look at them, see how righteous they are, see how holy they are, see how many elaborate garments that they wear, see how they make all of these long speeches to make it seem like they're so intellectual and anointed, and how they get all of these VIP seats in the synagogues and at the feasts, and how the people greet them in the markets and be called a men rabbi, and all of this stuff, right? So, but check this out. Where is it at? So, woe unto you, you blind guides. He called them blind guides. He also called them blind earlier, right? In Matthew 15. And what did he say? The blind leading the blind, and they'll all fall into a ditch. He says, which say, whosoever shall swear by the temple, it is nothing, but whosoever shall swear by the gold of the temple, he is a debtor, right? He says, ye fools and blind. He calling them fools, he calling them blind. What was it? Where was the one that? Oh, right. This is another one too. He says, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have omitted the weightier matters of the law, judgment, mercy, and faith. These are ye to have done, and not to leave the other undone. But look, this is what he was. This right here, right here. These three verses. these 3 verses actually sums up everything he was talking about in Matthew 15 when he was addressing them for the whole washing of the hands. He says, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye make clean the outside of the cup and of the platter, but within they are full of extortion and excess. Thou blind Pharisee, cleanse first that which is within the cup and platter, that the outside of them may be clean also. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye are like unto whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones and of all uncleanness. And look at this, all praise to the Most High. I didn't even make the connection, bro. This correlates to what Joel was saying earlier about touching a dead body.
You know, unclean.
Right?
Wow.
How unclean is it? Because Joel went into detail. When you touch a dead body of a man, you're so dirty, you're so unclean to the point where you have to go through a whole consecration purification process to include washing on the 3rd and the 7th day of specific ingredients, right? Right, Joe? What was those ingredients?
Oh, you had to take the ashes and water.
So you gotta do all of those specific things to get that uncleanness off of you, right?
He's saying you're full of it.
You're full of dead men's bones. So
And not just one. I mean, like lots of dead men.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What made, so like, since certain Pharisees got saved, and like obviously Jesus rebuked them out of love, like I don't think Jesus wanted anyone to perish. What did the Pharisees have to do to like truly believe? Like he didn't just rebuke them for any reason, right? He wanted to convict them to come to him. So what were they doing so wrong that kept them from coming into the kingdom of heaven?
I'm gonna give it to you right here. He mentions it. Where's it at? Okay, here we go. Verses 11 and 12. But he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. And whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted. Now, this, at first glance, it might not sound like it's an answer to your question, but I'm going to explain it. So it says, but he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. Who is the greatest man to ever grace earth? Ever? The Messiah, right? But he didn't come as king, he didn't come to rule, he didn't come to tell everybody what they should do and make himself all important, right? He came to serve. He came down and he actually washed his disciples' feet. Do you know how humbling it is to wash somebody's feet? Not only is it from a symbolic perspective to humble yourself, but it's literally a physical perspective, because whether they're standing up or sitting, you got to kind of like kneel down to get to their feet, unless both of you are like laying on the ground and you reaching over to wash the feet, but that's typically not how feet are being washed. So the person is sitting or standing and you are like lowering yourself to reach down and to actually take their feet and wash their feet. So the highest individual ever came down to be a servant. And that was clutch, because he was giving us that example of how we should conduct ourselves. And he says, and whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased. The word abased right here. Hey, Joel.
Yeah, I'm gonna look it up.
Look it up for me. I think it off context clues, it means like to be disgraced, to be brought low, to be the opposite of exalted, basically, right?
Let's see. Abased is. It says to depress, figuratively to humiliate,
Mm.
to bring low.
Yep,
Humble.
to bring low, yep. So exactly. So whoever shall exalt himself shall be brought low, shall be embarrassed, shall be, humiliated. And he that shall humble himself shall be exalted. The Messiah never exalted himself. Do you ever notice that in any of the scriptures, he never exalts himself? Other people exalt him, but he never exalts himself. Right? Even when they ask him who he is, and what did he say? He said, "Who do you say I am?" What are the people talking about? What do they call me? Right? He humbles himself always, and he's in return, he's exalted. However, whosoever shall exalt himself, and that's all the Pharisees was doing. Everything that they did was to exalt themselves. He said that they wanted to, says, but all the works they do, all their works, not some of their works, all their works they do, are to be foreseen of men, and they make broad their phylacteries. This is basically saying, this is a long speech. And enlarge the borders of their garments. Enlarging the borders of the garments is just basically saying that they get more elaborate clothing. They want to wear elaborate clothing. So these is your pastors with these 6-piece suits, $1,000 suits. What'd you say?
Oh, also putting the long tassels on. Oh, look, the opposite of religious, like tassels,
Yeah. They love the uppermost rooms at feasts and the chief seats in the synagogues and greetings in the markets, to be called of men, rabbi, rabbi, right? None of this says that they're out there doing the work of the Most High. None of this says that they're out there teaching the people how to keep the Torah, teaching the people how to love one another, teaching the people how to live righteously. This is what they're doing everything for.
It's really interesting talking about, Messiah coming to be a servant, and how really in all of Israel, the most important position that someone could have wasn't the king, wasn't a judge, it was to be a priest. That was the most important position anyone could have in Israel. And what was the priest? The priest was a servant. The priest ministered to the people. You know what I'm saying? The priest didn't do what wasn't out there having fun for himself. He was the people, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be servant, ministering to people, humbling ourselves, not exalting ourselves. Like, and like last week we were talking about the rebellion and how Korah wanted to be the priest. They're like, oh yeah, we need to be the priest. Why are you the priest? They're trying to exalt themselves. Then what happens? The earth opens up to people.
And took them out, right?
Because they were exalting themselves, and so they became abased, down into the earth.
Right? Absolutely. So, and he's addressing that. This is the continuous theme throughout both Matthew 15 and Matthew 23. I'd say this is the underlying theme behind the entire 4 Gospels, because the reason why the Pharisees wanted the Messiah dead was because he was exposing them for being hypocrites, and they wanted him out. They wanted him out of there.
Yeah, because it was all about religion for them, like it even goes back to the Garden of Eden. Once Adam had eaten that, they realized they were naked. They sewed fig leaves together to cover their nakedness, right? Now, all that really is their attempt to atone, to cover up what's wrong by not keeping the commandments. The Torah isn't even. The Torah is just how to live. Religion is what men come up with as a means of trying to earn their way earn their way to be redeemed or whatever the case is, earn something special, you know, and that's what the Talmud was all about. Because see, with these traditions, they're not necessarily bad, you know, themselves, right? It like we were talking about, you know, if you got a rule in your house, you know, it's not bad to keep that rule, right? But you can't go down the street to someone else's house and chew them out because they're wearing shoes in their house. You know what I'm saying? So just because it's a rule in your house doesn't mean it's supposed to be for everyone else, because it's not in the Torah, and you can't treat it that way. But what they had done was they had made up all these additional rules. And when they were in Babylon, they realized, hey, look, because we weren't keeping the commandments. So they started making additional rules, i.e. religion, i.e. sewing fig leaves together to try to cover themselves, in order to say, oh, look, we're not going to do that again. We're not even going to try to come close to disappointing Most High, you know? And that's actually how the Talmud started, was they sincerely just wanted to make sure they didn't break the commandment, right? So they made up all these rules so that they wouldn't even come close to making them break the commandments. Like to go to an analogy of the Garden of Eden, let's say Adam built a fence around the tree of knowledge of good and evil, believe that you're not allowed to cross that fence, right? The actual commandment is don't cross the tree. The fence is just his attempt to prevent her from even getting close to eating from the tree, right? But the actual commandment from God wasn't don't cross the fence, it was don't eat from the tree. You know what I'm saying? So what they did was they made up all these rules, probably sincerely wanting to do what's right. You know what I'm saying? They made up these rules to keep themselves from breaking the commandments, right? But ultimately, they started treating these rules as if they were the commandments, while disregarding the actual commandments and saying, that we made these up. Now it essentially became a golden calf because they put all their focus and energy on this man-made traditions and completely left God's commandments. You know, they weren't going to widows and taking care of the fatherless. All these different things that the Torah says we're supposed to do. They were all concerned. Oh, hey, look at me. Call me a rabbi. Greet me in the market when you see me. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Because the position of Moses' seat, right? It was not to be held in high regard, like physically. It was held in high regard because you, being a representative of the Levitical line, was your portion was the Most High's. That's why when the land was split up and given to the 11 tribes, the Levitical priesthood wasn't given an inheritance among them, because the Most High said he himself will be their portion. So they were given small sections, like small suburbs in the main cities that belong to the other tribes. And that's where you get like the origination of tithing, because they didn't have their own. So the tithes were given to them so that they could, one, live themselves because they needed sustenance, but also so they could also perform the different offerings and take care of the fatherless, take care of the homeless and the poor. Like their entire existence was literally to serve the Most High and serve the other people. But these people, these Pharisees and scribes further on down the road, literally took that original essence and flipped it on its head. And instead of serving the people, they wanted the people to serve them.
Yep.
Right. So you mentioned religion as man's way of trying to, you know, what was exactly, I don't want to misquote you. What exactly what you said?
Religion is basically like man's way of trying to get back to God, you know, because whenever the fall happened, man was separated from God, right? And so religion is man's way of trying to get back to God, right? To get back in a relationship with God. But God tells us how we're supposed to do it. He tells us how to get back in a relationship with Him, but we decide we want to get back in a relationship with Him our own way.
Yep. And so the reason I pulled this up, not here to talk about not here to talk about predestination or no free will or nothing like that, but I wanted to make the point here with these verses, right? It says, and we know that all things work together for good to them that what? Love the Most High. To them who are the called according to His purpose. Remember how the Messiah, he personified man as plants. And he says, everybody that the Father didn't plant, they're gonna be uprooted, right? So we shouldn't be concerned with these false teachers in regards to us individually, right? We shouldn't be concerned with them because they are already, they've already exposed themselves as to being those plants that's going to be uprooted. Because if they truly love the Most High, then they would seek to do what He commanded, not to create other contradictory laws. And it says, to who are the called according to His purpose. So we know all things work together for good to them who are called according to His purpose, right? So for whom He did foreknow, He also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of His Son, that He might be the firstborn among many brethren. Moreover, whom He did predestinate, them He also called, right? So we all know that all things work together for the good to them who love the Most High and who are called according to His purpose. So if He foreknew you, he predestinated you, meaning He selected you. And those who He predestinated, He also called, right? So He called you. So if He called you, you know you are in this right here. All things are going to work together for good. Now let's continue. And whom He called, then He also justified. And whom He justified, then He also glorified. And so this goes back to what the Messiah was saying. For those who try to exalt themselves, they are going to be brought low. But those who humble themselves, they are going to be exalted. So if we focus on what actually we are supposed to focus on, in a way staying in our lane, right? Then everything will reveal itself, and all things is going to work together for the good of them that love the Most High. So when you take that into concern, then you begin to understand why the Messiah went so hard in Matthew 23.
And another thing to note is He didn't go out looking, get into arguments with the Pharisees. He's come to Him, trying to say that he was the false teacher. He was just going out teaching stuff, and He didn't really go up to them and be like, "Hey, what's your problem?" No. He just taught what was right, and then they come to Him and try to accuse Him all the time. You know?
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Because hold on. This is the last thing and I'll be done. So was it Matthew? Was it Matthew 7, Joel?
What?
If I didn't come to fulfill the law, I didn't come to destroy the law.
5:17, I think.
5:17, yeah, that sounds about right. Matthew 5:17. So check this out. This is an additional proof. This will get added on to what was being discussed. So Matthew 5:17, this is when the Messiah says, "Do not think that I came to abolish the law or the prophets. I did not come to abolish, but to fulfill." So this word fulfill is confusing to a lot of people. Some people take it as that fulfill means that he abolished the law. Some people means that he fulfilled, meaning he brought the law to completion, which is why we don't have to keep the law anymore. These are these various understandings. But when you actually look at the word fulfill and you go into what it actually means, it's pliru, right? And it says to make full, to complete. But the context of fulfill these pop-ups. Okay, so right here under C, letter C, it says to carry into effect, bring to realization, to realize. It says of matters of duty to perform and execute, but specifically talking about Matthew 5:17, it is this. Universally and absolutely to fulfill, i.e., or for example, that's what i.e. stands for, to cause the Most High's will as made known in the law to be obeyed as it should be, and the Most High's promises given through the prophets to receive fulfillment. So it says to cause the Most High's will as made known in the law to be obeyed as it should be. This is the key. He came to show us how to obey the law as it should be. But why is it emphasis on it as it should be? Because the Pharisees and the scribes were teaching their traditions in the same breath as the law. And people were following those traditions, and that was causing them to actually transgress the law, because a lot of those laws were contradictory to the law. A lot of those traditions were contradictory to the law. So then, if you take this from this context and you apply it to the scripture, it says it reads completely differently. It says, "Do not think that I came to abolish the law or the prophets. I did not come to abolish, but to fulfill," or to show you how to keep the law as it should be kept, how to obey the law as it should be kept. And here's the verse after, and why the verse after makes a lot more sense. It says, "Think that I came not to destroy the law of the prophets. I came not to destroy, but to fulfill." Right? But look, when you check out the next verse, this is probably Matthew, the first book. Matthew chapter 5. So we was on 17. All right, so that's what we just read. But check it out. It says, "For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law, till all be fulfilled." All meaning everybody, be fulfilled, meaning to all reach the understanding of how to truly keep the law as it should be. Right? And then it even breaks it down even further. It says, whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, which is what the Pharisees were doing. They were teaching men to break the law with their man-made traditions. He shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. What did he say earlier? He says, those who exalt themselves shall be what? Humiliated, shall be made low. Right? That's being least in the kingdom of heaven. It says, but whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever shall humble themselves shall be exalted. The Messiah's words are parallels within themselves. And then check it out. Check this out. Look. For I say unto you that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven. Why is he using the scribes and Pharisees as a standard for us to exceed in order to get into the kingdom of heaven?
It's just because they were the ones that was considered to be righteous. Everyone thought they were righteous.
Right. But it's weird because he went through great lengths to expose them, right? But here we see them being used. The reason why he uses them as an example of righteousness for us to exceed, specific emphasis on exceed, is because they sit in Moses' seat. Right? They sit in Moses' seat. So all of these, we've read Matthew chapter 5, Matthew chapter 15, Matthew chapter 23. All of these things are literally explaining themselves. We see a continuous trend within the scriptures. And all of these are firsthand accounts from the Messiah. This isn't like the book of Numbers where you're reading a story about somebody, dealing with certain things or whatever. This is literally firsthand testimony and accounts from the Messiah himself. And so, we went through all of that, and all praises to the Most High. She's like, oh, I get it. Messiah is solid. And now for her, now that the Messiah is solid, those who follow the Messiah and speak the words that the Messiah spoke, like Peter, like Paul, and the other apostles, are now also solid as well. And now the whole fulfillment of her understanding of the New Testament is sound. Because when you doubt the Messiah, you doubt Paul. When you doubt Paul, you doubt the Messiah. When you doubt both of them, you start to doubt the New Testament as a whole. And when you doubt the New Testament as a whole, you become an Old Testament only person. I just throwing the whole New Testament out.
I had actually seen shortly before Rob Skiba passed, he did a video about how denying Paul leads to denying the Messiah altogether. And he said no. And I've actually, on the surface, a lot of what Paul says does seem to contradict the Torah. It does seem to contradict everything else in Scripture. But when you really break it down, it doesn't at all. But like once you deny Paul, then you have to throw out Acts too, because Acts says that Paul was legitimate, right? So once you throw out Acts, then who wrote Acts? Luke did. So you got to throw out the Gospel of Luke too, because how could someone who's so deceived about Paul write a gospel, right? Then once you throw out Luke, then you're like, well, let's look at the other ones, and then you end up throwing out the entire New Testament and denying Messiah because you didn't understand what Paul was saying. You know what I'm saying? And I will still tell people you should at least have read through the Torah once before you go through Paul, because if you're studying on your own, that is the way, because it's really, he is very hard to understand. Like I said, he's very hard to understand. But
Yeah,
But-
I didn't say it. Peter said it. I'm
Yeah,
just,
yeah, Peter said it,
I'm quoting
exactly.
people to Peter.
Peter said it. Peter
Peter
said he's
said
hard.
that Paul's writings are hard to understand from those who are unlearned and unstable rest, as they do the other scriptures to their own destruction. Listen, he said that. I didn't say that.
Yeah. So it's really you've got to recognize, because see, even Paul, if you compare even Paul's own writings to one another, he seems to be like back and forth. Oh, it's not good. It is good. It's not good. The law is done away with. No, it's in fact, we don't make it void. We do make it void. We're, you know, over and over again. Paul doesn't even agree with himself if you have that understanding of he's trying to say that the Torah is done away with. Now, once you realize that what he's really saying is not that, then all of his writings start to come together and make sense as well. And they don't contradict anything that Messiah said. They don't contradict anything from the Torah. But it's just, you have to have the foundation in order to be able to build on that. You can't just like Messiah was talking about, you know, building your house on sand or building your house on a rock. If you don't have a strong foundation, then things is going to knock your house down, crumble. You just put it on sand, it's going to fall apart. There's nothing to hold it up, right? And you know, understanding what the proper foundation is. You know, obviously Messiah is central to the whole thing, but Messiah is the Torah, so you still have to go back to the Torah, because the Torah was all about Messiah. You know, so you know, for someone to say, oh well, Messiah is my foundation, and that's all I need, just the New Testament. It doesn't work that way, because he was always back to the Torah.
When the Pharisees said, "Why are your disciples transgressing the traditions of the elders by not washing their hands before they eat the bread?" Messiah said, why is your traditions transgressing the commandments of the Most High? Right? He always points back to either like I said earlier, he always points either to Moses himself, to the Most High, or to the law itself. Like they'll say, "Oh, is it lawful to do this?" And he'll be like, "Well, what did Moses say?" Or why are your disciples transgressing the traditions of the elders? Well, why is it breaking the commandments of the Most High? Right? And then, or they'll say, or he'll teach them, and he'll say something like, "Well, for you heard it said X, Y, Z, but this is what is written, as it is written, blah, 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 blah." And as it is written, when he talks about as something is written, he is referring back to the Old Testament. Majority of the time is Torah, majority of the time.
Yeah.
He's always pointing back. I don't want to say that, I don't even want to say this, and it comes off the wrong way, because it makes it sound like I'm diminishing the Messiah, because I'm not. Like, the Messiah is a very, very, very important, very important piece to this whole puzzle. But he literally comes to echo everything that was written before. He literally comes to echo. He's like a parrot who's literally verbatim saying the same things that the Most High said, saying the same things that the Most High told the prophets to say, saying the same things that the Most High gave instructions to Moses to give to Israel for the entire time. He literally is echoing, saying all of those things over again. And like I said, I ain't trying to make him sound like diminishing him and saying he sound like a parrot, but I'm just saying, like, so if we're following the Messiah, right? If we have this understanding that we're in a new covenant, that we are supposed to be following the Messiah, saying that in itself isn't bad. But if we are supposed to be following the Messiah, we are also supposed to be following the things that he said, the things that he taught, and how he lived. What's up, man? And actually following how he lived. Well, how did he live? What did he do? He came down. What did he do? He taught, he served, he helped. Are we teaching? Are we serving? Are we helping? Are we using the things that the Most High gave us to be beneficial to others, right? You know, are we helping the poor? Are we helping the fatherless? Are we helping the widows? Most importantly, what did he echo the most? He was literally the written law, the written Torah. Are we keeping the Torah? Keeping the Torah is following the Messiah.
Yeah, because he kept it.
He kept it. Listen, he kept it. His disciples kept it. Right? When you go further after after he is crucified, dies and is resurrected, right? And then ascends back into heaven, the apostles that are left are keeping it. Paul himself kept it. If the Messiah himself and literally sequentially everyone after the Messiah is keeping the Torah, why all of a sudden now, thousands of years later, are we saying that through the Messiah and all of those different people, we are not supposed to keep it anymore? And they literally kept it.
It really goes back to a misunderstanding of Paul, because that's really what all of churchianity is about. It's about taking Paul's words and not understanding and basing a religion on that. Whereas Judaism is a religion based on the Talmud, right? Christianity is just it's mostly misunderstanding Paul, you know, and so the narrow path, because you know Messiah is supposed to be on the straight and narrow path, right? The narrow path is it's got ditches on either side. You got Judaism on the one side, throwing rocks at the Christians, saying, "Oh, you're doing it wrong. You're pagan." And then you got Christians on the other side. You're not listening to Paul, throwing rocks over there. We're supposed to be right in the middle. You know, we're supposed to be right in the middle, keeping the Torah and understanding, having the testimony of Messiah. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Paul, to me, and it just hit me like 15 minutes ago. Paul, to me, is like the physical representation of the Messiah when he was in the wilderness. Because the Messiah, when he was in the wilderness, he was tempted, right? And he went through all different types of temptations and attempts of the enemy to try to deter him, right? Well, Paul, if you read through his epistles and his accounts, oftentimes he uses himself as an example. And so he tells you about his struggles. He tells you about his temptation. He tells you about how he falters. But he also tells you about how he is able to prevail over those temptations and attempts of the enemy, right? And he's not perfect, because nobody can be the Messiah. However, he was able to, through the teachings of the Messiah and those before him, he was able to prevail over those things. And that's why he's one of the most prominent figures in the entire New Testament, because he was the guy that we can relate to. If you felt like seeking the Messiah was a bar that was just too high for you, which is understandable because that's perfection. The Messiah is an example of perfection. But if you could reach to Paul, you could probably reach out and touch Paul, right? Paul can come off as more attainable than Messiah. And so I understand why a lot of people could flock to Paul or whatever. But yeah, man, all praises.
Well, it's really, you know, it's just Paul is great. He's a great teacher. He understood it deeper than most people do, you know, like so deep. But
He was a Pharisee, and
yeah, and
had a
that's
spiritual
how he was
awakening.
raised. But he was having to unlearn all of this stuff, you know, man. Didn't go back. Now I'm gonna put all that on the shelf. All this stuff out the traditions of the elders, I'm gonna put that on the shelf. And then it comes through in his epistles where he's talking about, you know, we're not after the traditions of men, or we're not supposed to be doing this after the teachings of the Pharisees, or you know, the teachings of the elders. We're supposed to be doing what's in the Torah. And it gets because you know he just went from being zealous about the elders. Of course, he was zealous about the Torah as well, which a lot of Pharisees were, but to different levels. Some of them would, you know, and most of them probably would exalt the traditions of the elders above. Obviously, there were a lot of them were, anyways. But see, then Paul has to go in and unlearn all that stuff, put it on the shelf, and say, "No, that's not what my hope is." I've got to understand what Messiah is saying about the Torah, about himself, and how he is demonstrated and illustrated in the Torah for us, and how he completed to properly show how the Torah is to be kept, because it's just like James says, you know, that we need to walk as he walked, as Messiah walked. And then Paul says, imitate me as I imitate Messiah. So in order for Paul to be able to say, imitate me as I imitate Messiah, he would have to be imitating Messiah. And then James says, walk as we should walk the same way that Messiah walked. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a good point. That's a great point right there. Great point. Well, I appreciate everybody for rocking with us this long. I think this was the longest Shabbat talk we've had. So
oh man, how long has it been?
About 2 hours and 10, 15, 20 minutes. But we've been on here for obviously like 30 minutes before and backstage, you know. But so we've been on for a while. But the Shabbat talk, yeah. But yeah, man, I appreciate y'all for coming on here. I appreciate everybody for watching and checking us out. All praise to the Most High for his understanding. Like I said, as always, don't just take anything we say on here as gospel. Always go back, do your due diligence, do your research, read the scriptures, read the entire chapters of what we referenced before and after, and any type of, you know, any type of scriptures that's related to it, you know what I'm saying? Always look into that. But we just do this, man. We do this to not only to give edification, but just to kind of demonstrate, you know what I'm saying, like how much we truly love the Most High. And when you love the Most High, you follow what he say do, you know what I'm saying? So we just want to give a little bit of that back to the people. Well, anybody else got anything they want to share? Any shout outs or anything like that? Because as the sun goes down over here, the Shabbat has come to an end. But I am not sad.
We got new moon tomorrow.
Because new moon day is tomorrow. All praises to the Most High. Yeah, today was good, man. We had a great time this morning. Shabbat lesson with the kids. I took them through Genesis chapter 1, the creation account, like the correct creation account.
Yeah.
So they were getting it, bro. They were picking it up. Partly because they know that when they don't pay attention in Sabbath class, that they get their electronics taken away for the remainder of the day. So the last 2 weeks they've gotten electronics taken away. But this week they didn't want that, and plus they was listening, so they was getting it, and they are understanding concepts in regards to Genesis 1:14 that adults don't understand. So I was blown away. I was really impressed.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, today was good, man. Great Sabbath lesson with the kids. Then I got in the scriptures with a sister, man, and all of that, and then Shabbat talk, and then everything in between. Just all praises to the Most High. But, yeah, man, it's late. Let me go ahead and let y'all get on back to y'all families. I love y'all, brothers. I appreciate y'all.
I love you too, man.
Danny, you're more than welcome to come back. Any Shabbat talk you want. More Shabbat talks will be more organized, but this one we kind of just we was moving freely and flowed like the water in Joe's background. Yeah, man, I appreciate y'all, man. Until next time, y'all, take it safe, be safe, and shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
We take them to the streets. We wake up people up. We not gon' see defeat. And even though we sick, he got the remedy.
First, let me give all praises to the Most High. Heal the sick, raise the dead. Y'all should